Hello, I'm April Davila for Sit Right Here, and this is First Page Fridays, where we look at your first pages and read them the way an agent might, or an editor at a publishing house, who really are just readers when we get down to it. We're going to talk about what grabs a reader in the first page, how do we edit this particular page to emphasize what's working, and maybe edit a few things that need improving. So that said, I guess we'll jump on into it. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can see when new episodes launch. And if this is not your page and you would like to send one in anonymously, of course, you can use the link below in the show notes, send it in, and we'll put it in the queue. So without further ado, let's get into it here. Now, keep in mind, I haven't read this yet. Forgive me my mispronunciations. I will do my best. The ticking, let's see, do we have a title? Prince of the Seas. Okay. The ticking grew louder and louder, from a soft clicking to a raging thunder of talks that seemed to never end. Time moves in slow motion, edging on with little hope of speeding up, the clock staring deep into one's soul, drawing you into the immensely dark abyss. My patience was growing thin as the clock ticked on, as I sat uncomfortably in my chair. My eyelids were falling softly, as if any moment I could drift off into a deep sleep. However, the scratching of chalk against the blackboard made it impossible to sleep a wink. Even if I managed to float into a nap, Miss Thatcher would surely have something to say about my disrespectful behavior. It would especially be disrespectful since it was my history class, which was situated at the very end of the school day. Of course, I'm going to be wide awake to learn about the amazing details of old people's lives. Finding anything to keep myself from dozing off, I studied the countless historical posters scattered around about the room, each one showing parts of an unfamiliar history that I really had no interest in diving deeper into. I fiddled with the creased paper of my textbook, which was probably a few decades older than I would have guessed, folding the edges back and forth to just before the point where it would rip apart, trying to entertain myself somehow. All right. This is a very relatable situation, right? Bored person in class, assuming teenager, kind of reads as teenagers since you're in a history class. Let's jump back up to the top here. The ticking grew louder and louder, from a soft clicking to a raging thunder of talks that seemed to never end. So this is curious. To me, I was really expecting to, when we zoomed out and learned more, to see that this would be a room with more than one clock in it, like a lot of clocks, right? If there's soft clicking and raging thunder of talks, what it brought to my mind was the opening scene of Back to the Future, where Marty goes over to Doc's place and there's like 1,000 clocks and they all go off at the same time. So now that I know you're in history class, I'm guessing that's probably not the situation. The ticking grew louder and louder. I would just cut this, unless there are multiple clocks in the room. But the way I'm reading it, there's not. This is more of just a way into the boredom, right? The never-ending time. And again, I'll just say, as I always do, it's your story. I am simply making suggestions. You take them or leave them. Whatever works, it is your story. So that said, I got to work with what I got here. The ticking grew louder and louder. And then time grew is past tense. Time moves is present tense, edging on with little hope of speeding up. The clock staring deep into one's soul, drawing you. Okay, so we have not established a narrator yet. So when you drop the you in here, you're establishing second person. So first person would be I'm doing this, I'm doing the third person would be Ellen or Sam or, whoever was doing this, the boy, the girl. You is second person, and it's very hard to pull off. There are books that are written in second person. Generally speaking, it can be a little jarring, especially in the second line of a novel or short story. I'm not sure which this is. And the clock staring deep into one's soul. So if this is a story like about clocks and about time, then I think I get why you spend so much time on it in the opening, but I think it would be much more powerful to get us to your narrator as quickly as possible. So the point is, time, I'm going to say the ticking, I'm going to put this in present tense. Wait, even if I managed to float into a nap, she would surely have something to say about it. Trying to decide if it's majority past or present. Of course, I'm going to be wide awake to learn about they may finding anything to keep. This all seems like it's present tense. Okay, so I'm going to put this, the ticking grows louder and louder. Time moves in slow motion, edging on with little hope of speeding up. True, yes. I would take out this bit. My patience was, okay, so now we're back to past tense. My patience, I'm going to just put it in present. If it's past, you can edit it, of course. My patience is growing thin as the clock ticks on, period. So to say, to have as and then as again, it emphasizes this run-on nature of this sentence. It's kind of like two sentences. So I'm going to go ahead and break it into two. And especially since we're talking about ticking and clock, I think it's okay to have kind of a staccato rhythm with this opening bit. My patience is growing thin as the clock ticks on. I sit uncomfortably. Maybe you didn't intend it to be past. Oh well. We're falling. However, the scratching of chalk against the platform may. So now I'm thinking it's past tense. Okay, I'm going to put it in past tense. The ticking grew louder and louder. This is on me, not you. I made assumptions. Time moved in slow motion, edging on with little hope of speeding up. My patience was growing. And whenever you have a was and then an ing, just make it past tense. My patience grew thin as the clock ticked on. I sat uncomfortably in my chair. My eyelids were falling softly. So here's another, it's like the was falling, were falling. My eyelids fell. My eyelids fell softly. Oh, except you're trying to say they're not quite. My eyelids fell, and then, so you're getting to the drowsiness. I think we could say, so if they're already falling, if they were falling softly and at any moment you could drift off to sleep, yeah, I do think we can make this stronger. My eyelids fell, closed, then jerked open. Period. At any moment, I could drift off into a deep sleep. However, the scratching of chalk against the blackboard made it impossible to sleep a wink. Okay, so I think and our system takes out the carriage return, so I'm making my best guess at when you would break up these paragraphs. But I think maybe not spending so much time on the clock, getting to the I. We want to get to the I, my patience, get to your narrator pretty quickly. My patience grew thin as the clock ticked on. I sat uncomfortably in my chair. My eyelids fell closed and jerked open. At any moment, jerked might not be, let's say blinked open. At any moment, I could drift off into a deep sleep. However, the scratching of chalk against the blackboard made it impossible to sleep a wink. Now, I like this turn because it's like the clock, the sleepiness, and then you're like, oh, actually, this person's in class. They should be paying attention. So that's a fun little bit of tension. Even if I managed to float into a nap, Miss Thatcher would surely have something to say about my disrespectful behavior. It would be especially disrespectful since it was... Now, when I read this, I actually, in my head, the way it was worded, since it was my history class, I read that as for some reason, our narrator is the teacher and Miss Thatcher is covering for her or something. So to clarify, it would especially be disrespectful since it was history. And could you be specific? And why is it especially disrespectful to fall asleep in history versus calculus or, English or whatever, right? So there's opportunity to elaborate there. Why would it be especially disrespectful? Let's see if we can work with this. I truly have something to say about my disrespectful behavior. So I would, as someone who often fell asleep in high school, I had a math class after lunch, and I swear I slept through more often than not. That after lunch period is rough at the end of the school day. Okay. Miss Thatcher would surely have something to say about my disrespectful behavior, but her history, I'm making guesses here. Her U.S. history class was situated at the very end of the school day. Of course, I'm going to be wide awake to learn about the amazing details of old people's lives. Okay, now, as an old person who loves history, I could take offense, but I actually think this is, in terms of the voice of a teenager, of of course I'm going to be wide awake to learn about the amazing details of old people's lives. sounds actually pretty spot on. Then I think we break here. Oops, stop that. Finding anything. I think again, the INGs, it tends to land stronger if you find in an attempt to find something to keep myself from dozing off. Attempt to find something to keep myself from dozing off. I studied the countless historical posters. Now, having been in a history class or two, the posters are rarely countless. Like when I hear countless, I try to picture countless posters on a wall. I guess I picture them like overlapping or like wallpapered. Like countless doesn't seem like the right word. I would just say I studied the historical posters scattered about the room. And then each one, this is a fragment, each one showing parts of an unfamiliar history that I really had no interest in diving deeper into. Can you be specific? Like, I studied the historical posters scattered around the room, and my eyes landed on a portrait of Aaron Burr, one of many old dead white men I had no interest in. Like, could you be specific about it, right? Because those specific details start to tell us a little bit about this character. Or maybe it's world history and there's someone in a more broader world history that this person is uninterested in. So I studied, I'm going to just, again, I'm making assumptions here to give you some examples of specificity. I studied a faded poster of Aaron Burr, just one of many historical figures that I had exactly zero interest in learning more about or diving deeper into. I mean, you can't dive deeper into a person. You can dive into a subject, but I don't. So I like learning more, just being super clear, right? Learning more about. I fiddled with and again, so they're studying the faded poster of Aaron Burr. And they have no interest. I fiddled with the creased paper of my textbook. So is that a page? I assume. I fiddled with a creased page. I fiddled with a creased page in my textbook, which was probably a few decades older than I would have guessed. So this is, I think it would actually be funnier if it was like, which is probably a few decades older than I was. Because if they're going to guess, like if there's a guessing, it's not that hard to figure out how old the textbook is. So let's keep it more kind of figurative and snarky in that teenage voice, which is probably a few decades older than I was. Folding the edges back and forth, folding the edges, folding the corner. Let's say the corner, unless it's like the whole edge of the page, but I'm picturing it as a corner. Again, if I'm wrong, you fix. If it is the whole edge of the page, then you would want to say I fiddled with a crease along the edge of my textbook. That's weird. A crease along the edge of a page. I would just leave it as a folding the corner back and forth. Oh, and again, this is not a whole sentence. Folding the corner back and forth to just before the point it would rip apart, trying to entertain myself somehow. So I folded the corner back and forth until, this is awkward phrasing, to just before the point where it would rip apart. I folded the corner back and forth to just before the point where it would rip, until the crease was soft enough to rip apart. Until, we already said crease, until, let's say seam. Let's see, it was soft enough to rip apart. Trying to entertain myself somehow. So we did use the crease thing here. I fiddled with a creased page in my textbook, which is probably a few decades older than me. I folded the corner back and forth until the crease was soft enough until the line on the page, I don't know, let's go with seam. No, since I'm just making it, you would want to address that these are the same word. You could vary it up a little bit. I think the bigger issue here is that I have no sense of who this person is or what the story is about. The first page, what this first page does really well is put us in scene, right? We are in a particular place, a U.S. history class, with a particular person who is an narrator who is bored to death. Okay, so certain number of people in a certain place at a certain time. We don't know exactly what time it is, but we know they're very aware of the time, and that class presumably might be getting close to over. So it does a good job of anchoring us. The thing this page doesn't really do is give me any sense of what's the larger question? Why should I keep turning the page? I know, having been there, this class will end. They will get out of this alive. They're going to be fine. So I don't feel as drawn into this question of how will they get through this class? That itself is not, it's not super compelling. So as solid as the writing is, as much as I like that you have landed us in scene and I can commiserate with this character, I find myself a little meh on whether I'd turn the page and read the next one because I don't really get a sense of anything larger at stake. Now we did trim quite a bit in that opening. So let's look at our word count. Yeah, we took out, so it's only you're under 200 words now, which gives you a good 50 words still to play with on this first page. And I wonder if you could get in the question of what's after class? What is the thing that this character wants? That's what story is, right? It's someone who wants something, they try to get it, something gets in their way, so they try something else, they still don't get it. You repeat that over and over again with the stakes increasing until they either get what they don't or they get what they want or they don't. That's plot in a nutshell. So you have to have a character who wants something. And even if you're only just hinting at it in the first page, you need that hint if you want to compel readers to keep reading, to turn the page. So I think that would be my biggest feedback on this one. I also, if possible, would love to know a little bit more about this character. We don't even know if they are male or female. We don't know what part of the world they're in. We don't know if it's second day of class or last week of class, right? No sense of timing in terms of the world. And it's not that you have to slow down and actually explain each of those things, but if you could hint at them, right? Maybe if it's a female with long hair, she pulls her hair back into a ponytail, or she just braids one strand of it, right, to entertain herself. If it's a dude, I don't know, maybe he's doodling the girl he has a crush on or the boy he has a crush on. There've got to be some ways to kind of cue us in even the littlest bit about who this narrator is. So if you can fill in those two things, you'll have a real winner of a first page here. Thank you so much, author, for sending in your page, being vulnerable, and letting us all learn from your work. If this was not your page and you'd like to send one in, check out the link below. It's in the show notes. You can send it in. We'll put you in the queue. And if you are working on a novel or short story and you would like this kind of focused feedback on your entire manuscript, please, there's a link for that below to book a call to chat, and maybe we can talk about doing this kind of work on your entire project. Happy writing, my friends. I'll see you next Friday. Cheers.